Well,
as they decide whether to vote for you or not, they want to know where your money's coming from. Is not the key legislation, because you're hiding behind the process.
No, the Labour Party
Why
said,
don't you do what the other candidates do and tell? Don't Labour members have a right?
I've been asked that many times. I've said it's coming from trade unions, from crowdfunding, from individual donations.
Who's your biggest donor?
It's coming from those three. One of my biggest donors was put up on the website, I think, yesterday.
Right, that's one of the lawyer.
Yes.
5 out of 7 homes allocated to migrants. This shocking statistic leaves Keir Starmer speechless on Andrew Neil's show, but that's just the beginning. Watch as Neil dismantles Starmer's carefully crafted image piece by piece. We'll show you the hard-hitting questions that expose the truth behind the politician's promises. Can Starmer recover from this PR disaster? Before we move on, I'd like to ask you a small favour. If you appreciate this content, please take a second to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Over 98% of you watch the videos without subscribing. It costs you nothing, but it makes a huge difference to us. So, did you click the subscribe button? Great. Thank you so much. Now, back to the video.
Collective
it's
action.
not in your pledge.
Well, the pledge is 3 lines, Andrew. You're asking me for more detail, and I'm giving it to you.
Well, but the fact is the 2016 Trade Union Act, when it comes to cribbing and curtailing union power,
But we will build on.
Starmer, a pledge is not an indication. A pledge is a word, is your word. It's a pledge.
Andrew Neil has a legendary reputation as a political interviewer. Many politicians now fear Neil because of his incisive questions and relentless search for the truth. Even the most seasoned public figures are left reeling in their seats by his unmatched ability to cut through the smoke and mirrors of political rhetoric. Here comes Keir Starmer, the self-assured Labour leader who is prepared to accept the consequences. Starmer initially conveys a sense of composed assurance with his refined manner and well-considered answers. He believes he is ready for anything Neil may throw at him. But the tone changes as Neil starts his incessant interrogation. An experienced interviewer doesn't waste time on small talk. He questions Starmer directly about Labour's nationalisation plans and previous pledges. Starmer's body language conveys a subtle tension. Despite his measured initial responses, his fingers fumble with his pen as his eyes briefly dart away. Neil's method is an excellent example of political interrogation. He demands clarification, interrupts evasive responses, and rejects nebulous platitudes.
What I'm asking you is a position you're taking that the Corbyn left will find unpalatable.
Well, I'm not particularly interested in. I've got people from different parts of the party on my campaign working together, because I know that simply saying unity isn't enough. Everybody's going to say
that's not unpalatable.
It's a psychological struggle, with Starmer's poise starting to falter and Neil retaining an uncanny composure. Starmer's attempts to sidestep or evade questions only make the pressure mount as the interview goes on. Neil's ability to accurately translate intricate policies into unquestionable facts puts Starmer in a more vulnerable position. The tone of the Labour leader's responses becomes more agitated and defensive. When Neil questions Starmer about his relationship with Jeremy Corbyn, it's the first time that his composure truly breaks. Starmer's shifting positions are revealed, and he appears momentarily agitated. It's a pivotal moment in the interview, when viewers at home virtually experience Starmer's uneasiness via their screens. Even more difficult obstacles lie ahead after this clash between the seasoned interviewer and the up-and-coming politician. It's obvious that Starmer's abilities will be put to the test like never before as Neil gets ready to delve into particular policy matters. Will Neil's incessant probing continue to reveal the weaknesses in the Labour leader's political armour, or will he be able to regain his footing? A pledge is a word, it's your word, asserts Starmer with assurance. However, a network of inconsistencies becomes apparent as Andrew Neil examines Labour's nationalisation plans in greater detail. Will Starmer's words turn into a political boomerang, or can he make good on his previous pledges? Without wasting any time, Neil asks a direct question concerning Labour's promise to nationalise. At first calm, Starmer declares that the promise will be part of his manifesto.
The Labour Party rules say, carry out the checks, which we have to carry out, and I've got a compliance team doing that. Once you're satisfied the checks are carried out and the donations are properly in order.
Labour Party members who are being asked to vote for you should know who's bankrolling your campaign.
That is why the Labour Party set up those rules.
But you won't tell us.
They go to the parliamentary authorities who put them on the parliamentary website so that everybody can see them. I've been following that procedure. That is exactly the parliamentary
But the other
rules.
candidates in this contest have published who is bankrolling their.
But his attempt to make his stance clear soon falls apart. Starmer's response grows more evasive as Neil presses for details, implying that the manifesto would need to cover more ground than nationalisation alone. As Neil reveals obvious contradictions in Starmer's policies, the tension increases. There is criticism of the Labour leader's position on university tuition fees. Starmer's answer to the question of whether he would still be committed to scrapping them is surprisingly vague. He raises questions about his commitment to this important policy by tying the solution to the upcoming election. Neil continues, turning his attention to the Trade Union Act of 2016. He highlights how this law limited union power, which Starmer tries to minimise. Neil, however, is adamant that Labour members should be aware of how such legislation affects their rights. Starmer's attempts to downplay its importance only serve to emphasise how difficult it is for him to balance his current situation with his prior commitments. Neil builds to a startling revelation regarding campaign funding as the interview goes on. He questions Starmer about his hesitation to reveal the names of important campaign donors. Starmer hides behind party rules.
The point I'm making to you is the manifesto will have to have a lot more than that.
Of course, I understand.
It's not a manifesto.
Well, what about university tuition fees then? Will you remain committed to scrapping them in your first term?
They're all pledges, Andrew. So
these industries will be in your manifesto for nationalisation.
Yes, it is.
You pledged that you would strengthen workers' rights.
I did.
By repealing the 2016 Trade Union Act. Would you go further and repeal all the union laws passed since Mrs. Thatcher?
Well, I would repeal all of those that inhibit collective action.
While other candidates have made their donor information public. This is a stark contrast. Neil emphasises this point by saying the members of the Labour Party who are being asked to vote for you should know who's bankrolling your campaign. Serious doubts concerning Starmer's transparency and credibility are raised by his evasive answers to these funding-related queries. He puts himself in an awkward situation by refusing to give straightforward answers, illustrating the possible consequences of his lack of candour. This interview has wide-ranging ramifications. Starmer's leadership was clouded by his inability to remain consistent on important policies and his unwillingness to be open about campaign funding. One question remains after everything's said and done. How will Starmer's performance in this crucial interview affect the public's opinion of his capacity to lead Labour and possibly the entire nation? Keir Starmer's political armour is in ruins as the aftermath of this explosive interview comes to light. Neil's incessant interrogation revealed stark flaws in Starmer's campaign tactics and policy stances. From the unclear funding of his leadership bid to the murky waters of Labour's nationalisation plans, Starmer found it difficult to articulate a clear vision or exhibit transparency. The effect on public opinion has been severe and quick. According to polls, Starmer's credibility as a leader has significantly declined. His meticulously maintained persona as a steady hand behind the wheel now appears to be a facade that is collapsing under the scrutiny. Many people are wondering if this is the man who can bring Labour back to power after watching the interview. However, the question of accountability in the era of the media may be the most urgent one to emerge from this political carnage. Do we need more interviewers like Andrew Neil in a time of carefully crafted PR and soundbites? Or is the public interest ultimately served by this combative approach? One thing is certain as voters consider these issues: Keir Starmer's road to the top spot just became much more difficult.